Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Explainer. Today we're diving into a tiny creature that's having a huge and growing impact across Europe, the tick, Dermacentor reticulatus. It's a big deal and it's on the move, so understanding this silent invasion is more important than ever. So, have you ever heard of the meadow tick or maybe the marsh tick? Yeah, it goes by a few names, but no matter what you call it, this little arachnid is a major player in the health of our animals and even us. We're about to find out why. So here's the game plan for today. First, we're going to meet the tick itself. Then, we'll track its silent invasion across the continent. After that, we'll get into the really crucial part, the dangerous bite. We'll look at how doctors and vets diagnose and treat the aftermath. And finally, we'll talk prevention and what the future might hold. All right, let's start at square one. What exactly is Dermacentor reticulatus? To really get it, we first have to understand how it relates to the animals it lives on. Okay, first things first. This tick is an ectoparasite. So you know how a tapeworm is an endoparasite? It lives inside a host? Well, this is the opposite. It hangs out on the outside, latching onto the skin for a blood meal. And believe me, that simple fact is the key to its entire life and all the trouble it can cause. And here's another key term. It's a metazoan. Basically, that just means it's a complex multicellular animal. And this is where it gets really fascinating, because this complex little creature is basically a taxi service for much, much simpler single-celled organisms, things like protozoa, which are the actual pathogens that cause these really awful diseases. It's a dangerous partnership for sure. So if we want to get really nerdy about it, here's its address in the tree of life. It's an animal, of course. It's an arthropod, like insects. But get this, it's an arachnid. That's right, it's actually more closely related to spiders and scorpions than it is to something like a mosquito. It belongs to the Ixodidae family, known as the hard ticks, and if you ever see one, you'll know why they got that name. So how would you actually spot one of these? Well, for a tick, this one's actually kind of pretty up close. It has this really distinct marbled or ornate pattern on its back, like a silvery white design on a dark background. And here's a key detail. Look for 11 little ridges, they're called festoons, right along its back edge. Okay, so we know what it looks like. Now for the big question, where is it? Because that map is changing, and honestly, it's changing fast. You see, for the longest time, there were basically two distinct groups of this tick in Europe. One out west, one out east, with a big empty space right in the middle. But that's not the case anymore. That gap is closing, and in some places, it's expanding its territory by up to 2.3 kilometers every single year. It's connecting those two populations, and countries like Poland are right in the middle of this new unified territory. Let's take the Netherlands as a perfect example of what's happening. Before 2004, if you found one of these ticks there, it was a rarity, probably on a dog that had just come back from a trip abroad. But 2004 was the turning point. Vets started seeing dogs with a disease called canine basiosis, even though these dogs had never left the country. That was the smoking gun. It meant the tick wasn't just a tourist anymore, it was living there, breeding there for good. And today, it's in almost every single province. Yeah, one scientific paper really nailed it when they said the tick transitioned from an imported curiosity to a recognized autochthonous threat. That word autochthonous is just a fancy way of saying it's now a local problem. Basically, it went from being a tourist to a local. It's not just visiting anymore, it's moved in. So why do we care? Why does any of this matter? Well, it all comes down to its bite. Because it's not the bite itself that's the main problem, it's what the tick is carrying inside it. To really get this, you gotta understand its life cycle. It's what's known as a three-host tick. So, stage one, the tiny larva hatches and finds a small animal, think a mouse or a vole, for its first meal. Then it drops off, transforms into a nymph, and finds a bigger host. It feeds again, drops off again, and then molts one last time into an adult. And that adult needs a large host, like a deer, a dog, or even one of us, for its final meal. And you see the problem, right? Every time it jumps to a new host, it's a chance to either get infected with something new or to pass on a disease it's already carrying. Okay, so this tick is most famous, or maybe infamous, for carrying two major diseases. For our dogs, the big threat is canine babesiosis. It's caused by a parasite, a protozoan called Babesia canis, that gets in and just wrecks their red blood cells. And for people, the main worry is a bacterial infection called T-Ebola, that's short for tick-borne lymphadenopathy. And it usually causes a nasty black sore where you were bitten and your lymph nodes get really swollen and painful. Let's stick with the dogs for a second because canine babesiosis is no joke. It is really, really serious. In the acute phase, you're looking at a super high fever, the dog is just completely wiped out, their gums are pale from anemia, and their urine can get very dark. Some dogs get a chronic version that comes and goes, but the one that's absolutely terrifying is the per-acute phase. It's this sudden state of shock, and it can be fatal fast. This is why you cannot wait to see a vet. Okay, so the worst has happened. A pet, or even a person, gets bitten and starts showing symptoms. What happens next? How do doctors and vets figure this out, and what can they do? Well, they've got three main tools. First up is the old school method, microscopy. You're literally looking at a blood smear under a microscope for the parasites. Then there's serology, which looks for the antibodies your body makes to fight the infection. And then you've got the high-tech stuff, like PCR tests, which can actually find the pathogen's DNA. But here's the catch. None of these are foolproof. They can miss infections or just tell you you've been exposed in the past, not that you're sick right now. The good news is we can treat these diseases, especially if they're caught early. For dogs with babesiosis, vets use powerful antiprotozoal drugs. And, this is interesting, the exact drug can depend on where you are. Some that are common internationally aren't even registered for use in places like the Netherlands. For humans with T-Ebola, it's usually a course of antibiotics. But the bottom line, for both dogs and humans, is that getting treatment started right away is absolutely critical. So with all this in mind, you can see why the conversation has to shift, right? It's not just about treatment anymore. It's got to be about prevention. So what can you actually do to protect yourself and your four-legged friends? And prevention isn't just one thing. It's a whole strategy. So for your pets, that means being super consistent with vet-approved tick products. The colors, the spot-on treatments, the tablets. For you and me, it's about being smart when you're outdoors in their habitat. Long sleeves, long pants, using a good repellent. And most important of all, do a thorough tick check on yourself, your kids, and your pets as soon as you get inside. And if you do find one, getting it off quickly and correctly is the #1 best thing you can do to stop a disease from ever being transmitted. Now, I know some of you are going to want to go deeper into the science on this, which is awesome. Just so you know, all the information we've talked about today was compiled using a Gemini deep search, and we've put a full list of all the scientific papers and reports we used in a Notebook LM document. The link for that is right down in the description. And all of this really brings us to one final and I think really important question you should ask yourself. With this tick expanding its territory so quickly, is it a problem where you live? It's a serious public health question that more and more of us are going to have to think about. And that's our look at Dermacentor reticulatus. Hey, thank you so much for joining us for this one. If you found this helpful, please think about subscribing for more explainers like this. We'd love to hear your thoughts or any experiences you've had down in the comments. Stay safe out there.